All right, so let's talk about creatine. I
Yeah,
mean, it's a supplement that always seems to be a hot topic, especially if you're trying to, pack on some muscle.
for sure.
And for today's deep dive, we're looking at this blog post. I think it came out last March, yeah, called Best Creatine for Muscle Growth.
Okay.
It's by Mohammed Natsif Udin. He's the founder of Muscle Theory.
Hmm.
And, our goal here is to kind of like sift through all the information and see what we can pull out that's actually useful.
Yeah, right.
Like what can we learn from his research, from his experience that will help us make better decisions when it comes to using creatine for building muscle?
Absolutely. And I think what makes this source particularly cool is that it's not just some random person on the internet. This guy, Mohammed, he's actually got a bodybuilding background.
Oh, yeah.
So he's actually walked the walk. He's not just talking theory here. He's actually used this stuff.
Right.
So we're going to go beyond just like, the basic science and really dig into like, okay, what types of creatine are out there? What are the optimal times to take it? And even get into some specific brands that he recommends.
That's awesome. Okay, so everyone's heard about creatine, but
Yeah.
let's break it down.
Yeah.
Why is it such a big deal when it comes to muscle growth? Like, what is it actually doing in your body?
So the key thing here, and Muhammad, he really emphasizes this, is the role of ATP.
Okay.
You can think of ATP as like the primary energy source for your muscles. When you're hitting the gym, lifting those weights, it's ATP that's powering those muscle contractions. And creatine basically helps your body replenish that ATP faster, especially during those intense bursts of effort, when you're really pushing yourself.
Oh, okay.
So what does that mean for you? It means you might be able to squeeze out an extra rep or two. You might be able to lift a little heavier. And over time, that leads to greater muscle growth because you're pushing your muscles harder.
Got it. So it's basically like giving your muscles that extra edge, that extra fuel they need to really work hard and grow.
Exactly. And then there's this whole other aspect that Muhammad talks about, cell volumization.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
It's fascinating, right? So creatine has this property where it actually draws water into your muscle cells.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, on a surface level, that can make your muscles feel and even look fuller,
Yeah.
which can be motivating for a lot of people.
Right. You see results faster.
Exactly. But even more importantly, what's happening inside those cells is that it's creating a more favorable environment for muscle protein synthesis, which is essentially the process of building new muscle tissue.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like creating the perfect conditions for your muscles to grow.
So it's not just about, boosting your performance during the workout itself. It's also kind of setting the stage for long-term muscle growth. Right?
Exactly. It's working on multiple levels.
That's really cool. Okay, so Mohammed dives into all these different types of creatine.
Yeah.
And the first one he talks about, he calls it the gold standard, is creatine monohydrate.
Right.
So why is that one considered like, the OG, the top dog?
Well, it's earned that gold standard title for a reason. I mean, think about it. It's been studied for decades. We have tons of research, solid evidence showing that it really works, that it's effective for increasing muscle size, strength, and power. Plus, for a lot of people, it's the most affordable and accessible type out there. You can find it pretty much everywhere.
Oh, for sure.
And Mohammed, he specifically gives a shout out to Bare Performance Nutrition Creatine Monohydrate. He likes that it's a clean product and says he's gotten really consistent results with it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Mhm.
So monohydrate is kind of like the reliable workhorse of creatine, right?
Yeah, you could say that.
Now, what about creatine HCl? I've heard people talk about that.
Yeah, that's becoming more popular. And Mohammed, he brings it up because he knows that some people, they experience some digestive issues with regular monohydrate.
Right.
Maybe they get bloated or a little bit of stomach discomfort.
Okay.
So creatine HCl, it's designed to be more soluble, meaning it dissolves better in water. The thinking is that because it dissolves more easily, it's going to be easier on your stomach and maybe even absorbed a little better.
Interesting.
And you might not even need to take as much. Mohammed recommends Kaged Muscle Creatine HCl as a good brand for this type. And he mentions that it's easy to find on Amazon.
Oh, cool. So for anyone listening who's had trouble with creatine in the past, HCl might be worth a try.
Definitely worth exploring.
Now, what about micronized creatine? How does that differ from regular monohydrate?
So micronized creatine, it's basically creatine monohydrate that's been ground up into a much finer powder.
Okay.
It's got smaller particles. And what that means for you is, first of all, it mixes way better.
Oh, yeah.
No more clumps in your shaker bottle.
Right?
And some people believe that it might get absorbed into your system a little faster, too, because of those smaller particles.
Makes sense.
Mohammed, he recommends Optimum Nutrition Micronized Creatine Powder for this one. And it's a really popular choice, especially among athletes.
Got it. So easier to mix, potentially faster absorption. Now, this next one, I think this is where it gets kind of interesting, creatine gummies.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the more recent innovations.
So is that legit? Can you actually get, the same muscle building benefits from eating a gummy?
It might seem a little strange at first, but Mohammed makes a good point. These gummies, they still deliver creatine. That's the key.
Okay.
And for some people, it's just a much more appealing way to take their creatine. They might not like the taste of the powder, or maybe they hate swallowing pills. And Mohammed, he actually recommends Beast Bites creatine bites as a good option. He says they taste good, and of course, they deliver the creatine you need.
That's awesome. So it's like a win-win. It's convenient, it tastes good, and it still gets the job done.
Exactly. Options are always good.
Now let's talk about timing. When's the best time to take creatine to really maximize those muscle building effects?
So this is something that people debate a lot, right? There's research that suggests that taking creatine post-workout might be slightly more beneficial. The thinking is that your muscles are more receptive to nutrients after a workout, so you might get better uptake during that window.
Oh, that?
But Mohammed also points out that taking it pre-workout can give you that extra ATP boost right when you need it, to fuel your workout.
Right.
And he actually shares his own personal experience. He found that taking 5 grams both before and after workouts worked really well for him. He felt like he was able to maintain a consistent level of creatine in his muscles that way.
Interesting. So it sounds like consistency might be even more important than the exact timing.
I think that's a good takeaway. Now, another thing that comes up a lot is the loading phase.
Oh, yeah.
People wonder if they need to do that when they first start taking creatine.
Right.
And Mohammed, he explains that a loading phase, usually you're taking around 20 grams per day, split into a few doses. For like 5 to 7 days, it can help you saturate your muscles with creatine faster.
Okay.
But it's not absolutely necessary.
So you could just skip it.
You can, if you just take a consistent daily dose, like 3 to 5 grams, you'll eventually reach the same level of saturation. It just might take a little longer.
Okay.
So the loading phase, it's kind of like a shortcut. If you're impatient and you want to potentially see results faster, you can do it. But if you're more patient, you can just skip it and go straight to a consistent daily dose.
Got it. Makes sense. Now, Mohammed mentions several brands specifically.
Yeah, he does.
We've kind of touched on them here and there, but let's just do a quick rundown for everyone listening. Like, what are his top picks based on his experience and what he's seen?
Absolutely. So for overall quality and, he really likes their micronized creatine powder, he recommends Optimum Nutrition.
Okay.
If you want a pure monohydrate, no fillers, no frills, he likes Bare Performance Nutrition.
Okay.
For some of those more advanced forms, like the HCl that we talked about, he recommends Kaged Muscle.
Okay.
And then for those gummies, those convenient and tasty gummies, it's Beast Bites. And what he emphasizes is that all of these brands, they're not just, random companies. They're used by athletes all over the world. They've got a good reputation in the fitness community.
That's really helpful to know, especially if you're like standing in the supplement aisle and you're like, which one do I choose?
Right. It can be overwhelming.
Now, this is a really cool point that he brings up, gender-specific recommendations for creatine. What are his thoughts on that?
So his take is that men, because they generally have a larger amount of muscle mass, they might benefit from taking slightly higher doses of creatine. And he specifically suggests Optimum Nutrition micronized creatine powder for guys who are really looking to pack on strength.
Okay.
Now, for women, he emphasizes that you can absolutely reap the same rewards from creatine, but you might want to start with a slightly lower dose or even consider those gentler forms like the HCl or the gummies just to avoid any potential bloating or digestive discomfort.
Oh.
And for women, he recommends Beast Bites, Creatine Bites, and Caged Muscle HCl as good starting points.
So it's really about, finding what works for you in your individual body.
Absolutely. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about different fitness goals. Like, how does creatine factor in if you're trying to lose fat versus if you're trying to bulk up?
Right. So for those of you focused on fat loss, Mohammed explains that creatine can actually be an indirect aid.
Oh, okay.
Because if it helps you push harder during those high-intensity workouts, you're burning more calories, your metabolic rate is going up. And he specifically mentions Bare Performance Nutrition Monohydrate as a good option if you're aiming for both muscle growth and fat loss.
Got it.
Now, on the flip side, if you're bulking and you're trying to gain weight, those traditional monohydrate powders, the ones that tend to cause a bit of water retention in the muscles, they can be a good choice because they're going to contribute to that fuller look, and they might even help create a more anabolic environment for muscle growth.
So even the type of creatine you choose can be tailored to your specific goals.
Exactly. It's all about strategy.
Okay, so to wrap it up, if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, what are Mohammed's top recommendations?
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
All right, so here's the cheat sheet. For pure muscle building effectiveness, Bare Performance Nutrition Monohydrate is his go-to.
Okay.
If you're worried about solubility or you've had trouble with creatine in the past, Kaged Muscle HCl is a great option.
Got it.
For convenience, on the go, easy to take, Beast Bites Creatine Bites are the way to go.
Okay.
And for those gender-specific recommendations, Optimum Nutrition for men, Beast Bites for women.
Awesome. That's super clear. So after this deep dive, what would you say is the most important takeaway from Mohammed's blog post? Like, what's the one thing people should remember?
I think the biggest thing, the thing that really jumps out is consistency. You don't need to obsess over finding the absolute perfect type of creatine right away. Just pick one that you think will work for you and then stick with it.
Right.
Take it every day consistently, whether it's before your workouts, after your workouts, or some other time that works for you. Combine that with a good diet, a solid training program, and that's where you're going to see the real magic happen.
Totally. Consistency is key. So everyone listening, take a minute to think about how these different types of creatine that we've talked about, how they might fit into your lifestyle, your goals. What are your preferences? How does your body react to different things? As Mohammed says, the best creatine is the one that works best for you. Maybe give one of those recommended brands a try, see how it goes, and who knows, maybe it'll be that extra boost you need to reach those fitness goals you've been working towards.